In the area of rebuilding trust, which is something that you constantly hear, fiduciary responsibility and fiduciary standard.
Right in there. Dave, second question asked.
That's the most debated issue today. Industry is spending lots of money trying to water down those standards. And the question becomes, what should be the fiduciary standard? Should there be a uniform standard? And what are your perspectives on that?
Okay. I am a cocktail party bore on the subject of the fiduciary standard. I chaired the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association in 2011. Leading up to that, I chaired the Private Client Committee of SIFMA, and as chair of the Private Client Committee, got the securities industry, the brokerage firms in America, and the asset managers, who, by the way, were deeply concerned about this issue, to agree to unanimously and unambiguously support a fiduciary standard of care for any investment professional offering investment advice to individuals about their wealth management activities. That position was codified in the Dodd-Frank Act, Section 913, and I sat in front of Barney Frank's committee, and Barney Frank endorsed my first book and testified in support of Section 913, what became Section 913 of the Dodd-Frank Act, which gave to the Securities and Exchange Commission, which gives to the Securities and Exchange Commission the right, the authority, but not the obligation to write a fiduciary standard of care for investment professionals who offer advice to individuals about their securities portfolio, their wealth management activities. So it gets my juices flowing when I hear that the industry is trying to water down the fiduciary standard. The industry has supported unambiguously a fiduciary standard of care for all wealth management activities. And now, what's happening? How many people would consider themselves to be reasonably knowledgeable in this room about the fiduciary debate that's going on today? Okay, so I'll just summarize quickly. You have investment advisors, whether they work for asset management firms or they work for RIAs or they work for brokerage firms that are duly registered as investment advisors, operating under principles that have been built up through 40 Act activities that we know as the fiduciary standard today. The 40 Act fiduciary standard. It's actually not in the 40 Act, but it's built up around 40 Act fiduciary standards. Then we have 913, Dodd-Frank, that gives the SEC the authority to write a new or to bring the 40 Act fiduciary standard over to or do whatever they want in extending fiduciary responsibilities to activities that aren't investment advisory activities. Okay, so that means any and all other brokerage activities that relate to individuals could one day be subject to a fiduciary standard if the SEC got on its horse, figured out how to do it, and wrote such set of rules. And then thirdly, you have the Department of Labor, which has just recently reproposed original rules, withdrawn, rewritten, now out there for public comment, that would have proposed to extend ERISA fiduciary standing to anybody who talks to clients, to individuals about their retirement accounts. Most specifically and dramatically IRAs for the first time. Moves ERISA fiduciary rewritten rules to IRAs. So the original vision that we had, that let's as a matter of public policy, move from multiple state suitability, ERISA, and 40 Act rules for advising individuals, which they don't understand. They don't know which one applies to whichever firm or advisor they're talking to. And let's just have one standard. So no matter who an individual talks to, they're covered by that standard, and it's a fiduciary standard. That was the policy thrust behind Section 913. So now we have the worst of all worlds: ERISA fiduciary as it applies to retirement accounts, 40 Act fiduciary as it applies to discretionary accounts, suitability standards as it applies to brokerage accounts, and some state standards for insurance advisors who engage in various activities. It's a hodgepodge, a melting pot, and none of it makes any sense. So that's where we sit today. And the situation is, it's broken. What the DOL has done, in my opinion, breaks it worse than it was broken before. And it's a mess, and we have a long way to go before we get to where the investing public deserves to have us get to, which is a single, uniform fiduciary standard of care for anybody who is providing advice. And why can't we agree on it? It's the old devil is in the details. And boy, is it ever.